Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
It is Friday on the Three Martini Lunch. We're so glad you're with us. We don't really have good, bad, and crazy martinis. We're going to have three different aspects to the news that President Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for coronavirus. Jim, it was only October 1st, maybe the wee hours of October 2nd. We've already got our first October surprise, and given that it's 2020, something tells me we've got quite a few more that will unfold. But the president tweeted yesterday evening that his longtime aide, Hope Hicks, who had started with him at the White House, left and is now back. She tested positive, and so they were undergoing testing and had gone into quarantine. And then shortly after midnight, he tweeted out that he and Melania had, in fact, tested positive for the COVID SARS-2 virus, and Barron has not. Ivanka and Jared have tested negative. Mike Pence has tested negative. The RNC chairwoman, however, Ronna McDaniel, has tested positive. So far, it's either asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. So we'll see how this progresses. Right now, Jim, for the most part, I think most people wish them well, but that's not the case everywhere. Joy Reid, for example, tweeted out, "Here's how wrecked Trump's credibility is at this point. I've got a cell phone full of texts from people who aren't sure whether to believe Trump actually has COVID. He lies so much," one friend just texted. "Is he doing this to get out of the debates?" Others are texting. And if you think that's crazy, you should read her replies. Linda Sarsour also thinks it's a debate duck, although Trump's former physician, Ronnie Jackson, thinks he'll be fine and no longer COVID positive in time for the next debate, since it's about 2 weeks away. Then you've got Zahra Rahim, former national spokeswoman for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. "It's been against my moral identity to tweet this for the past 4 years, but I hope he dies." On the lighter side, on the nicer side, Rachel Maddow, who's obviously no fan of the president, very nice tweet. "God bless the president and First Lady. If you pray, please pray for their speedy and complete recovery and for everyone infected everywhere. The virus is horrific and merciless. No one would wish its wrath on anyone." Jim, the president is supposedly still energetic. Mark Meadows says he could still do the job. He's obviously doing it from the residence. So as we start here in the first phase of this discussion, what do we make of the fact that the president has now been diagnosed, even if it remains only mildly symptomatic?
Yeah, there's a lot to go through there, Greg. One of the first things that comes to mind is if something is against your moral identity to tweet, then don't tweet it. And if you do tweet it, then I guess it's not really as against your moral identity as you thought it was. Beginning and first and foremost, it sounds like a cliche to say thoughts and prayers about the president, but I really will be saying a prayer for the president and the First Lady tonight, and for everyone else who has been exposed and is fighting off the infection. You didn't mention it in your list. I think it broke right before we started recording, Greg, but Senator Mike Lee of Utah also said he had tested positive. And I believe he was at the White House earlier this week. Look, by a lot of measures, the president should pull through this just fine. He's obviously the president of the United States, is going to have access to the best doctors, the best technology, the best equipment, and the best treatment regimes and programs that they possibly have. So that's the good news. We also should acknowledge, though, that this is a 74-year-old man who is kind of in the definition of a stressful job. He is a little heavy for his age. I'm not throwing stones. I just simply am observing this. He's on medication for cholesterol. His coronary calcium CT scan back in 2019 was at 133, indicating he has plaque in his blood vessels. The president has to take this seriously, and it sounds like he is. I have a corner post there where I just kind of observed, and we'll talk a bit about the political ramifications of all this. But if the doctor says, "I want you on 2 weeks of bed rest," I want the president to be on 2 weeks of bed rest. If he says less than that amount of time, fine. I just hope that for his sake, for Melania's sake, for Barron's sake, and the entire Trump family, I hope he beats this. I hope he beats this quickly, and I hope he beats this solidly. Some people make a quick recovery and are back to 100%. Some people have lingering issues, and the presidency is a tough job. So I will very much be pulling for the president to beat this, as well as Melania and everyone else who's been, Hope Hicks and everyone else who's been infected recently. This is a big deal. This is a serious consequential, development that kind of puts everything else on the back burner. I understand, obviously, they're trying to trace who gave it to the president. The initial thought was Hope Hicks, but apparently some people are saying that if the president developed symptoms as early as this morning, that may not have been long enough, so the incubation period for Hicks may not have been correct. This is going to create some real serious complications for those who are working in the White House. Despite how we kind of think of the White House as looking grand and everything, people who work inside say actually it's pretty cramped. A lot of people have to get a lot of work done in the West Wing. Very tough to maintain social distancing, and it sounds like up until recently they were not wearing masks consistently. I hope they start wearing them consistently now. So operating government at this level is going to be particularly challenged now that we know that there was an outbreak in the West Wing, that Hope Hicks had it. I assume they're testing everybody else. I hope they'll be able to isolate and find that. But obviously, considering national security issues and things like that, a lot of work that goes on at the White House can't be done from home. So we just entered a completely different stage of this. I kind of feel like some people wanted to believe the pandemic was behind us, and I think in a very glaring way, it is not. The vaccine's getting closer. We are probably going to have this not a factor in our lives. Ideally that vaccine comes along early or towards the end of this year, early next year, and we get back to normal life sometime in 2021. But until then, we still have to be very careful, and a whole bunch of us, including the president and first lady, have a fight on our hands.
Absolutely. And it's good to know that he's in the best possible medical care that there is. He's going to be constantly monitored. The First Lady, as far as we know, is in excellent health. She's obviously considerably younger than him. And hopefully Barron does not get it since he has tested negative at this point. Jim, I assume there are ways for the president to sign anything he needs to sign, like we can sign real estate documents just on the iPad now. He doesn't actually have to have stuff brought to him with a pen, does he?
You could disinfect the pen. There are ways to work around this. But yeah, he should be able to operate, as long as he physically feels up to it, he should be able to do his job. Now, here's the thing. People may remember Boris Johnson back in the spring got the infection, and he was doing okay for a while, and then it turned very serious. He was in the ICU. We kind of easily forget. It was about a 3-week period there, and the foreign secretary kind of stepped in. They don't have a vice president, but they stepped into the role of the prime minister for a couple-week period. So I went through the history of that in the U.S. presidency. Actually used much less frequently than you think. Reagan did it back in 85. Ironically, not in 81 when he was shot, but in 85 that the President Reagan was going to be under anesthesia for surgery for his colon. And they put him under, and Vice President at that point, George H.W. Bush, was the acting president for a couple hours. And a similar experience in 2002, George W. Bush was having colonoscopies. People don't realize Dick Cheney was acting president of the United States for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it's not inconceivable we could see a scenario like this. Still premature. It sounds like the president is still awake, alert, and doing okay. But we just don't know how this is going to shake out. And so that's an unusual circumstance that could be coming down the pike at some point.
Won't be surprised if Mike Pence is working from home for a little while here too. But again, hopefully everybody is going to be fine, and the symptoms do not get too severe for anyone. All right, let's talk about another aspect of this, Jim, because Tuesday night was the first debate. That was in Cleveland, and next week, of course, is the vice presidential debate, and I think the next presidential debate is the town hall on October 15th. So we're basically 2 weeks away from that. Again, there are folks who think he could be not only recovered, but not even COVID positive by then. Obviously, he'll be tested frequently to find out if that's the case. So it's possible he could be on the same stage. I think at this point, everyone's assuming he'll participate. Exactly what that will look like could be something, since not only will Biden and Steve Scully be there, but you'll have a smattering of the regular folk asking questions at the town hall. So I guess there's not a lot we can answer right now, but what does this do to the debate format, the debate schedule, do you think?
Yeah, look, this is, first of all, I had always kind of thought that the vice presidential debate was going to be a little more important than usual, in part because of the advanced age of Joe Biden. And obviously many Republicans are saying that Biden may or may not finish his term, and that Kamala Harris would become kind of the president in waiting in a Biden administration. And obviously the president has this health issue. So now I think there's going to be a great deal of interest in it. I assume it will go forward on the 7th. But, maybe we have the equivalent of a Zoom debate, or maybe they keep Kamala Harris and Mike Pence in different rooms. They're going to change the format, I suspect. I think everybody think everybody had kind of figured that, okay, this wasn't that bad. You've obviously seen discussion of Melania Trump and various other members of the president's family did not wear masks when they were in Cleveland earlier this week. Well, I think everybody's going to be wearing masks, and I think it's going to be a lot more precautions for this. We don't know what the president's condition is going to be heading into the week of the 15th. I think everyone's hoping he will be hale and hearty and either well on the road to recovery or fully recovered, but we just don't know. The president could be, he could be in rough shape at that point. We just, sometimes some people have a very tough time fighting this off, shortness of breath and things like that. And those are the kind of things that would probably make it very difficult to debate. I don't know if that would lead to a postponement. I don't know if that would lead to a cancellation. It's kind of funny in light of all the people who speculated that Biden was going to cancel or that Biden was going to look for an excuse. I think it is very likely that Biden and Trump will not be in the same room, certainly for the rest of the month and maybe not for the rest of the debate. And let's point out that, we have the vice presidents next Wednesday. The second debate of the president is supposed to be the Thursday after that, the 15th. And the last debate is supposed to be the 22nd of October. Now, I don't know. Again, president could, by tomorrow be looking terrific and everything could be fine. Or he could be having a lingering fight with this. So I don't know if we will see. I doubt the debates would be canceled entirely, but I also do think that they're probably going to be altered. And we probably have seen them in the same room for the last time in the year, the 2020 presidential election cycle.
Well, I assume they're going to rigorously test. So if he tests negative for a number of days leading up to it, you think they're still going to change it?
I suspect that the Biden campaign is going to want to keep their guy away from basically all human beings at this point. Look, Biden is even older. Biden has had even more health issues in his past. So I think this is the sort of thing that will make everybody around both candidates much more careful than they have been.
Jim, just in thinking of this, which gives you more confidence? An acting President Mike Pence, God forbid that would be necessary, or an acting President Kamala Harris, God forbid that would be necessary?
Well, I think you know which guy I like better. But again, I hope it doesn't come to either of those cases. Again, the thing will be odd, and you kind of wonder, the challenge for Tim Kaine was very different from the challenge that Hillary Clinton faced last cycle. The challenge for Kamala Harris is going to be very different from the challenge for Joe Biden in this cycle. Mike Pence is going to go out there and interrupt everything Kamala Harris says for, the way the president did this week. Pence is going to come out, though, and Pence, I think it's safe to say, likes to get a lot more specific. He's a lot more wonky, kind of his earnest Midwestern tone. And I think the contrast, in normal circumstances, the contrast would be very, very effective. I think this kind of just throws a giant new X factor into how the debates shake out from here.
Should we do a giggle count for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, Pence will give that, faux sympathetic, I pity you head shake. I'm doing it, but you can't see it because it's an audio podcast.
Yeah, I get the sense that Mike Pence would be grimly resigned to have to step in for a day or so if things were necessary on the medical front, whereas Kamala Harris would be spinning herself around in the chair. Not that she would want anything bad to happen to Biden.
Biden comes back. I don't understand it. This key to the Oval Office worked on Monday.
Hi, I'm Sarah Carter. On every edition of the Sarah Carter podcast, I say we're taking back the story. And that's exactly what we have to do. Whether it's the Russia hoax, the relentless attacks on President Trump, pretending Antifa doesn't exist, or covering up for the repressive Chinese government, the mainstream media isn't interested in the truth. It's up to us to uncover the truth and share it with others. Please join me in taking back the story on the Sarah Carter podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Well, let's talk about our final aspect of here. Jim, let's see. It's October 2nd, which means there are, 32 days left until Election Day, and probably a couple more days beyond that to find out for sure who won. How does this change the race? I mean, Trump is obviously not going to be able to hold rallies probably for the next week, probably two, that he loves to get out there and do that. Polls would suggest he's got some work to do to make up gaps in some of the key states. So Biden, I assume, will just hunker down even more. But how do you expect this to play out?
Yeah, I mean, this is I could summarize it with the short, simple, I don't know. By the way, if you think this is the sort of sudden development that changes the race, nearly 2.7 million Americans have already cast ballots. primarily states like Virginia, our home state, North Carolina, Wisconsin's up to 437,000 early votes. I think it's something like 16% of the vote total from last time. Look, I could see. I think this is the sort of thing that would, normally create a great deal of sympathy for the president. I think that no one likes to see the president or first lady or anybody else facing a serious health issue. I think we've already seen, and you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, a lot of ugly responses. It's not unthinkable that if it gets widespread enough, if it's not just some random Yahoo on Twitter, but some House member, some Democratic official somewhere comes out and says something like, oh, I'm glad the president got this, or something like that. I think you could see some backlash. I think you could see people really being horrified if this is seen as a widespread Democratic response. As you noted, perfectly appropriate comments this morning from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and even some folks like, as you mentioned, Rachel Maddow. So I'd like to think, you love President Trump, you hate President Trump. You don't want to see him suffer, and you don't want to see him die. And I think the whole thing extends to the president's family. So, hopefully people take that higher road. Look, there are some people who are going to say, this shows the president wasn't taking this seriously enough. I do know that if the narrative of the presidential race was that we're getting out of the pandemic and things are getting better and things are returning to normal, well, the president getting diagnosed with coronavirus kind of interrupts that. That's not what you'd like to have happen. As I mentioned, this will probably take the president off the trail for a while. If he medically requires it, I hope he stays off the trail. I don't think that by itself will make a huge difference. I put something up in the corner this morning, just observing that one trip or one rally is not going to make the difference, I don't think. And, in order to have a second term of Trump, we need to have President Trump around. So I think the president's health has to come first and foremost, both long term and short term. But the campaign commercials are still going to run. The campaign social media, all the other efforts of the campaign are still going to run. As long as the president is not delirious or in any type of, state, he'll be able to keep doing what he's doing. He may be able to do video interviews and things like that. So I think this probably won't be an enormous game changer. That said, I do think there are probably some Republicans, given the choice between having your candidate, not sidelined by coronavirus for a portion of the month of October, or having that, you'd rather not have it. And I think this is probably one more, to use a term from the early Obama years, headwind in the face of the Trump campaign, but probably not a decisive one.
Yeah, and just one thing that we thought we were going to probably talk about a lot today, but given the news, we didn't. We did get the September jobs report out. The number of new jobs created was below expectations. It was still 661,000 in the positive direction, though. The expectation had been about 800,000. But the unemployment rate did dip. The estimate was going to be 8.2. It actually is now 7.9, which I believe going south of 8 was the big achievement of the Obama campaign just before the 2012 election. So we'll see if that actually makes a difference.
I was going to say, if we were placing bets yesterday, I would have said that would have been our good martini, and that would have been our lead item. The short answer is that was a pretty good report. Probably not quite as good as the administration would have hoped, just because that is the last report before the election. The numbers are moving in the right direction, but it's a slightly slower pace. We'll see if this is a temporary blip or whether this indicates a more serious slowdown next month. It could have been worse, could have been better. I think that it'll end up being not nearly as much as a factor as perhaps you and I were thinking yesterday.
Jim, you realize it's been 2 weeks since the death of Justice Ginsburg, and everything that's transpired in that time, the new nomination, the fight over the process for that. We've had the debate. We've got this news now that the president is COVID positive. And if it weren't 2020 enough, Rick Moranis is in the hospital for getting sucker punched in New York. We still got 3 months left of this year.
Yeah, I just wanted to put some sort of Ghostbusters joke in there, but I hope Rick Moranis is healing well. And, when de Blasio's record of failures is collated, in amongst all the groundhog murders, we're going to have to put, a crime wave so bad that they hit Rick Moranis in there too.
Well, get well, Trumps, get well, everyone who is affected by COVID. This weekend comes at a good time. Let's all take a chance to rest up. And Jim, we'll be back together on Monday. See you then.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Always grateful for a 5-star rating and a kind review. Also, remember to get us on those home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Have a great weekend, and we will be back on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.